Hi everyone, this is Alex here. So I thought a good way to kind of kick off this channel would be to start with kind of my personal philosophy of nursing. Um, when I was in school, I had three different intervals within the program. Before you started, right before you started, the middle, and then again towards the end. You kind of had to rewrite and reevaluate your personal nursing philosophy. And so I think this would be a good way to kind of both obviously showcase that, but then also kind of show my love for writing as well. Tomorrow I start my new job at Kaiser. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's only my second nursing job that I've ever had, and it's my first travel nursing assignment. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, so let's just get right into it. So this is the paper that I wrote in socialization into nursing, which was a class I took right before I started the actual nursing program itself. So I wrote, "A human being, the product of millions of years of evolution and natural selection, humans are the only living creatures on Earth with the capacity for creativity and a yearning for satisfaction beyond that of the physical realm. These are people with their ability to love, hate, dream, imagine, but despite all the complexities encapsulated by the human psyche, we are still vulnerable to the elements. Time is the most guaranteed of all, but there are vast arrays of external forces within the universe that threaten the biological vessel of Homo sapien. And that is where the nurse makes her grand entrance into the proverbial stage. The nurse is at the front lines in the battle to preserve life in its most optimal condition. When patients enter the nursing domain, they arrive as people, with all of their glorious imperfections, seeking assistance in the quest to perpetuate their own existence. But when you strip away all of mankind's progress, the knowledge, the existential wonderment, and the metaphysical desires, you are left with a primordial creature that possesses but one primal instinct, perhaps the most ancient of them all: survival. I would argue it to be the driving force behind almost anything a species does, and a nurse is at the forefront of that propagation, for if you take a moment to ponder upon it, a vast majority of people will probably come into contact with a nurse at some point in their life. Health is a measurement of the degree to which a living organism can function as intended in a manner that is suited for maximum life expectancy. Overall health is determined by one or more of the following factors: genetics, decisions, situations, and the environment. Some people possess a genetic predisposition towards better health, while others are plagued by programmed shortcomings inherited from generations past. A major part of health is choice. Choices can, in some cases, determine just how long we have to live. The situations and environments we find ourselves in have the power to inhibit or promote health, such as in the case of a small boy residing in a third world country where access to medical care is scarce. Illness is the manifestation of the aforementioned external forces and their negative effect on an organic life form. It refers to any sort of compromise in homeostasis. It is deeply rooted in our primal fears. Man's over-continuing manipulation of the elements in the form of drugs and other elixirs has led many, especially here in the Western world, to shrug off many illnesses. But for those ailments where encroachment has yet to be readily fortified against, still manage to incite fear in even the most brave of individuals. Diseases such as cancer, immune deficiencies, and many viral infections remain unchecked and undefeatable. The environment refers to our surroundings. It is the culmination of all the things we come into contact with outside of our bodies. The environment is a true double-edged sword. It contains the necessary components to produce and sustain life, as well as a vast array of harmful agents that threaten to impair or end life. Nursing is the process by which we restore health to its optimum levels. It utilizes various techniques to achieve this, treatment being at the center of all of them. Wound care, drug administration, vital statistics monitoring, observation, these are some of the weapons in the arsenal of the nurse in the fight against poor health. Oftentimes the struggle is centered on forces that are beyond the control of the patient in question, but people have been known to sometimes be the very cause of their own misfortunes. Bad decisions, often made out of ignorance, can lead people down self-destructive paths. The problem is the degradation that results from poor decision-making can go unnoticed for a long period of time due to its sometimes creeping nature. And sadly, there are many instances where by the time any sort of maliciousness is detected, the damage is irreversible. So I believe that nursing is not just the process of healing, but of educating as well. There is no better medication than prevention. In conclusion, my nursing philosophy is very Zen. The human is a biologically and emotionally complex sentient being. Humans reside within the environment, a space containing both life-sustaining and life-threatening properties. Life is contingent upon health, which refers to the general well-being of a person. Many things in the environment can cause health problems, often resulting in some form of illness. Illness leads to a homeostatic imbalance, typically accompanied by negative feelings of pain. Pain and other atypical happenings within the human body is a cause for concern in most people. It is this concern that usually leads people to seek the help of medical professionals in an array of different healthcare settings. In the case of hospitals, ill people or people worried about their health arrive with hopes that a doctor, someone whom society recognizes as an expert in health-related matters, can diagnose and resolve their health-related issues. And that is where the registered nurse steps in, because after a doctor has assessed a person and admitted them, they are now designated as a patient. It is from this assessment that an RN must draft a plan of action and implement a strategy with the ultimate goal of restoring health to the highest level possible. I think nursing boils down to three things, all of which are based on the status of each individual patient: getting people well, educating people so they can avoid becoming ill, or making people as comfortable as possible before they die. So really, nursing applies to everyone: the well that may become sick, the sick that may become well, and the sick that are going to pass shortly. I pose a single question. What does a private practice nurse, a hospital nurse, and a hospice nurse have in common other than their shared title of nurse? The answer is everything. Nursing is health, and health is nursing. Health is survival, and survival is life. To me, nursing is the ultimate promoter of life. So that was how I felt kind of going into nursing. So then about halfway through the program, this was kind of my reevaluation of that. And that first paper was just kind of my own personal feelings. This next one, I actually did, we had to use references and stuff, so I kind of looked a little bit more into other nursing theorists and things like that to kind of give me a basis for this one. So philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. Nursing is the art and science of aiding others in the pursuit of the highest quality of life. It is our underlying personal beliefs and values that ultimately shape our philosophical view of the world. Nursing is an extension of this view. We spend much of our lives in our profession, so it would stand to reason that any nurse would need to examine the core of their practice and define their own nursing philosophy in order to better understand the purpose and nature of their actions. This is my personal philosophy of nursing. In order to understand one's current disposition, we must first examine the circumstances that led them down the initial path. I myself cannot claim to be a born-to-be nurse. My entrance into the ancient profession happened out of necessity and a respect for logic. My mother's physical condition increased in severity while I was away at college, on a completely different career path, mind you, whilst my sister's and father's support for her decreased. I saw only one clear course of action. I must opt out of the university and return home to take care of my mother. I made that decision in a heartbeat. The next would prove more difficult. What would I do to support us? Knowing full well that I would be unable to continue upon my present course of study, I frantically began researching both the local and national economic trends, and within minutes stumbled upon a career that was in high demand, required minimal education to acquire an entry-level position, and boasted of multiple avenues for growth and expansion. That career was nursing. And with that, I returned home to Ocala, where I began taking the remaining prerequisites to enter into the nursing program, which I began in the spring of 2014. The rest is history. Obviously, the factors of desperation and the promise of financial security do not necessarily equate to passion, so needless to say, it was my head much more than my heart that was in it initially. To be honest, the spark that ignited my love for nursing didn't occur until I was about halfway through my Associates of Nursing Education, when I made my first clinical trip to the Centers, a psychiatric facility that would inspire me so much that I would later come to be employed there. My strongest suit in school was always therapeutic communication and behavioral studies. I preferred having conversations and understanding others to passing medications and understanding medical pathophysiology. Once I discovered an area for a self-proclaimed right-brainer to be successful, my whole attitude towards nursing changed. For the first time, I felt that I belonged in nursing. My philosophy of nursing is actually quite simple. I carry it around with me in the form of a concise internal mission statement. My duty as a nurse is to help others retain, attain, and maintain their highest quality of life. I love the ambiguity of this statement because its non-specific nature can be applied to all patients, groups, and communities across the lifespan, from the newborn striving to attain life in those first moments to the terminal hospice patient trying to maintain the highest level of comfort before entering into the great beyond. This is one of the many things I love about nursing. As nurses, we are privileged to be with people along every stage of this journey we call life. So, like I said, that was kind of halfway through. That was around the time that I worked at the centers, and at that time I was still kind of really into psych and stuff. But then, as I got towards the end and stuff, I still like psychiatric nursing. Don't get me wrong, but I just didn't really feel like it really was for me in the end. I felt that psych nurses didn't really get to spend the kind of time with the patients that I kind of thought they did. I felt like, as a mental health tech, that I kind of had more contact. But that's, I digress. That's really not relevant to this. But then that brings me to my final paper, which I wrote right upon graduating and earning my license. And this one was called Nursing a Philosophy. When I began upon my journey into nursing, my ambition was fueled primarily by a longing for a secure financial future. I had my vague archetypical notion of nurses, but I was unaware of the full scope of their mandate. Having attended nursing school for just a few days, shy of 1.25 years, I must admit that my understanding of the profession has been turned upside down on its head. And not just that of the nurse, but of everything that is interconnected: health, illness, the environment, and what it means to be human. This is more than just an essay about nursing philosophy. It's an expose on the human condition. The periodic table of elements. All things in the known universe are comprised of a specific combination of these basic building blocks. The fact that human beings share some of their composition with an asteroid, a river, or a star has always fascinated me. What do all of these things have in common aside from their carbon, hydrogen, and or oxygen bases? They all have the potential for energy, its creation, its usage, and its eventual exhaustion. That's what a human being is to me, potential. When I look at a person, I see the potential to do, be, and eventually not be a great many things. I believe time and space to be cyclic in nature as opposed to linear, which is why history is almost always destined to repeat itself. The lives of humans follow a similar pattern. We're born, we live, and we die, returning to the earth from which we came. As our energy fades and we move from entropy to entropy, we transform and become a source of renewed energy, thus sustaining the continual cycle. But I also ascertain that there can be no sustainability without balance. On a macroscopic level, everything within the realm of understanding is the result of some sort of balance. If the earth was any closer or any further from the sun, it could not sustain life. And if a person's blood pH sustains above 7.45 or below 7.35, they will almost certainly die. For me, the term health can be equated with balance and the term illness with imbalance. If humans represent the potential for energy, then a healthy person is one whose energy is balanced throughout. Whenever there is an interruption in the energy cycle, the balance is shifted, resulting in illness. This process can be gradual or emergent. Essentially, from the moment we're born, we begin the dying process. It is during these times of imbalance that people will seek out health care, and when they do, they have taken on a new role, that of the client. When attempting to identify clients, I don't think the question should be who are they, but rather who aren't they? They can be anyone. One of the many things that intrigue me about nursing is the fact that nurses see people throughout all stages of development, from the nursing midwife helping to bring new life into the world to the hospice nurse aiding a client into the great unknown, and everyone in between. Imbalance can occur at any time and anyone. Therefore, every living person has the potential to be a client. They are people in need of some sort of restoration or relief. The environment can be the space in which we exist, or it can exist within our space. Everything we come into contact with or perceive to come into contact with has the ability to affect our health, and the environment that we create in our minds can be just as influential as the one we're physically surrounded by. It can empower us or restrain us. It is therefore vital for the practicing nurse to take all environments into consideration when caring for the client, including the clinical environment, the home environment, the internal environment, and the created environment. Maintaining the safety integrity of each of these realms is integral to the process of attaining, maintaining, and retaining homeostasis. So what is nursing essentially? To me, it is a conglomeration of differing roles that work towards a common goal. During my time in nursing school, I have noted the following thus far. Nurses must have a working knowledge of medical science, including anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and pathophysiology, as well as social science such as psychology and psychiatry. They must possess a heightened state of physical, emotional, and mental acuity as to perform complex psychomotor skills. They must be effective in their communication so as to establish trusting therapeutic relationships with their clients, as well as to provide comprehensible instruction. They need to be aware of the many laws, rules, and regulations governing their profession on multiple levels. But above all, they must have genuine empathy and an unwavering regard for the rights and dignity of others. I believe it's a nurse's duty to do whatever they can within the scope of their abilities and practice to restore the balance to the human system, because the optimum is almost always going to lie somewhere in the middle. Even in the dying client, it is the responsibility of every nurse to keep that client as comfortable as possible until the very end. In essence, I believe nurses are a little bit of everything: medical clinicians, therapists, teachers, laborers, authors, advocates, politicians, even family members. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I feel so privileged to be entering into a profession that offers so much diversity abroad and from within itself. Nurses are indispensable in the cause for human continuity and prosperity. Nursing is the past, the present, and the future. And so there you have it. There's my kind of evolution of nursing philosophy from the time that before I started school, during school, and kind of towards the end. And I can honestly say that having now been a nurse for 2 years, I still stand behind basically everything that I've said. It pretty much has lived up to what my expectations of it. It really is just about trying to, aiding people and keeping them at, like I said, either helping them either retain, attain, or maintain that highest level of functioning at whatever stage of development they're in. It's just trying to give them the best quality of life possible until, that life is over, and so you want to try to keep people as healthy and comfortable as possible until the very end. And that's really what it comes down. And there's just so many, and that's kind of that's the takeaway from it. But, and then of course that the process of the actual, meat and potatoes of it, doing it is the complicated part, like, what that entails. But if you strip it all away, that's really what it comes down to, is that we're following physician orders, but we're also making some of our own clinical judgments as well. And of course, as we increase our education and move up the ranks a little bit, we can have a little bit more autonomy and a little bit, in that decision-making process as far as, what we do for our patients, diagnosing and prescribing medications in the case of the nurse practitioner and whatnot. So, so I enjoy it, and I look forward to starting this new assignment tomorrow. So I'll definitely give you guys an update on how that goes. Thank you.